go. Hello and welcome along to the Odell Academy in conversation with. And big shout out to all the listeners on the Actors Toolkit podcast. Today we've got something a little bit different. We are joined by one of my close friends, Kevin Macisaac, who's a Scottish actor based down in Australia. Kevin, how are you doing?
Marvelous. It's 9 o'clock at night here. So as well as your lunchtime, it's a Friday night for me. So I'm having a little glass of rosé while I chat to you.
Quite right. I'm just going to put my phone on silent, highly unprofessional. There we go.
Yes.
Excellent. So Kev, do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your career so far? Who is Kevin Macisaac?
I'm still trying to work that one out. I'm now 40, a ripe old 40. I trotted off to drama school at 16. Left the house pretty immediately, got out and started off at a little theatre arts course up in Dundee. Cracking little course, but it's a kind of foundation bridge to getting into the uni course, the drama school course that we'll talk about in a minute, I'm sure. But I got into it really early. I've never really been anything else, notwithstanding the fact I've done every single job there is to do while supporting an acting career, carried all the plates, pulled the pints, worked in the marketing, call centres, all those things. And now have another sort of concurrent business as well. But I'm still an actor. I've been a theatre actor, TV, film, do lots of voice stuff now. And I got lucky. The day we graduated, it was the Independence Day. It was the 4th of April, 2003. And I got a job that day. I got a phone call while at the graduation ceremony from my new agent, and I booked a theatre job. So I worked in theatre for about maybe 2 years in Scotland, started getting TV work, and that's when I thought, it's time to pack up and go to London and seek my fame and fortune. And that turned out, as it did for most people, to be 5 lost years.
Yes, yep.
And as it does for many, and then I got a couple of hard knocks, got a bit lucky, and I found myself in Australia from 2010, and I've never looked back. Really, it's been the best decision I've ever made, professionally and personally.
Yeah, excellent. And what have you been involved in lately? What kind of things have you been doing?
Very recently, last couple of weeks, I've been doing voice stuff. So I've got into some looping work, into a loop group, which for your listeners and viewers, if they don't know, it's for everyone in the background in TV and film who are just going rhubarb and not saying anything. At some point, they do need to get a voice. Yeah. So you'll get a team of actors into a studio, and we'll do all the sort of background noises, squeaks, and miscellaneous conversation. So I've done that for a couple of films. One with Aisling Bea, a wonderful Irish actress who's doing really well in Britain at the moment. And just yesterday, it was a Guy Pearce movie I was doing voices for. Did a commercial last week, a voice radio commercial.
Excellent.
And just before Christmas, did a short film, and also did a massive thing for Disney Plus, a big thing over here called The Artful Dodger, which is exactly as it sounds. And the wonderful Tim Minchin in there, and Thomas Brodie Sangster, and some cracking talent. So I got a nice little part in that. That'll be coming.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, tell us about that. Is that streaming on Disney Plus or?
Yep, yeah, that'll be a streamer. So I can't remember if it's a 6-parter or more, but it's massive. It's a sort of flagship show for Disney, so it'll be huge. And later this year, we've got, not even later, maybe in a couple of weeks actually, got a release of a film called Carmen by director Benjamin Millepied, who was a former ballet dancer for the New York City Ballet, principal ballerina, and he's married to Natalie Portman. So he's made a remake of the famous Carmen with Paul Mescal, who's killing it at the moment. Paul I think was up for an Oscar recently. Right, Melissa Barrera, who seems to be everywhere. So that's coming out soon. I've got a nice little part in that. So I keep busy. I pop up in all sorts of places.
Fantastic. Yeah, and of course, Paul just won an Olivier Award last week for A Streetcar Named Desire, which is
brilliant.
Yeah. Excellent. Good stuff. So how does being an actor in Australia differ from being an actor in the UK? Do you find that the sort of casting process is slightly different, or the looking for work? Is that a different way of doing it?
It's like the job's the same. When you book the job, it's the same. It's the same skill set. There's nothing funky there. But I found the process easier. There's something about There's something I always found about the UK which felt kind of impenetrable at times, and I don't want I don't want it to sound like sour grapes. Maybe it is, but the amount of times I knocked on the door of places like the RSC or the National or the bigger casting directors, your Susie Figgis, your Nina Gold, people like that, and I just couldn't get a foot in. Whereas I came to Australia and pretty much immediately I knocked on doors and people went, "Yeah, mate, who are you? What do you do? Come on in." So there's a fair go attitude in Australia, and I don't know if it's part of it being a new country. They don't have the same kind of bedded down institutions as the RADAs and places like that. So they give everyone a go. And I think once you're in that door, you better not cock it up. But people have been very, very kind the moment I got here. I don't know if there's kudos that comes from being a British trained actor over here.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, every door swung open, and I've had some real champions in the industry that are the reason that I'm working. Really, a couple of casting directors that put me up for everything. They get me back time and time again, and without them, it'd be a different process. It'd be hard work.
Yeah, totally.
Notwithstanding some cracking casting directors in the UK who are very nice to me as well. One of whom was on your podcast I saw, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
But it just feels much easier to knock on doors and introduce yourself here. And I had one person early days say, "Kev, look, I might not speak to you for a year or two, but just trust that I'll always know you're there, and we will work together and we'll know each other for years." And that was delightful, and she's been true to her word.
Good stuff. And do you find that there's more work available in Australia than there is here, or less, or how do you find that?
Tough to say, Jamie, because I've not been in the UK for 13 years now, and I've still got an agent in the UK. And the last time I spoke to them, the advice was stay where you are, you're doing fine, and the work's sort of slim pickings at home. Mm-hmm. I'm still seeing amazing stuff come out of the UK, amazing TV and film. I don't get to see the theatre anymore, obviously. So I don't know. What I can say is that when the shutdowns and lockdowns happened, a lot of stuff came here. So this was the sort of last bastion for work, the sort of the butt end of the world. We were the last ones to get COVID. So a lot of productions came here, and a lot of American productions come here as well. So we get all the Marvel stuff that comes in. We get all the Thors, all of that comes into the studios here. So in terms of opportunity, I feel like I've got access to bigger and broader projects here than I ever did in the UK. And there's no shortage of work. I mean, the streamers are picking up now. They've now got content quotas for local content. So there's a backlog of stuff coming in. So yeah, there's plenty of it.
And do you feel there's a smaller pool of actors out in Australia competing for the jobs? I mean, I was looking the other day, there's now 85,000 actors registered on Spotlight, notwithstanding the other maybe 100,000 that aren't registered on Spotlight. Do you find that there's a smaller pool to compete with when you're there, or?
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know if we've got the 85,000 here, but because of just the geography of Australia, you tend to have Sydney or New South Wales being the state. You tend to have New South Wales actors, and there's enough work for them here. You've got people in Victoria and Melbourne, and they do their own thing as well. And of course, people jump between the two. Then there's WA, there's Perth out in the west. It's a 4.5-hour flight away. So there's little sort of micro regions within Oz. So it feels like there's enough work to go around. We don't get saturated the same way you are in the UK with 20 drama schools pumping out 30 kids every year.
Yeah.
And they don't stand a chance, frankly. There just isn't enough work to sustain them.
Yeah.
But here it does feel like people are working. Although we get the odd flight risk from the big NIDA graduates here that go to the States, and they do get vacuumed up quite quickly. There's a lot of people here that do very well, and then they jump over to Los Angeles, which again feels like a smaller distance from here to there than it is from the UK to LA.
Yeah, of course. And do you find that being Scottish helps you at all? Are you known as Kevin Macisaac, the Scottish actor, or does that work in your favor?
Yeah, I'm the big ginger Scotsman everywhere I go. It works. Yeah, it works in my favor. I mean, I came over here thinking I'll be lucky if I get a job, and I think that was fueled by watching Australian actors in the UK that at the time weren't getting any work unless they could do a Scottish accent. In Edinburgh or in London, they had to be English. And over here, I've got a real niche. There is stuff that comes up that wants a Scottish accent. I see some Australians doing it and think maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah.
It comes out a bit Russian. So I'm the go-to for all things British, which is curious. They ask me often if I can do a British accent.
What is a British? Yeah, we get this a lot from our American clients. What is a British accent?
As a fellow Scotsman, you'll know this sort of deep inherent offence in that when I start screaming, this is a British accent, but they want a Hugh Grant or some sort of RP or something.
Yeah.
But they do like my voice in productions. I think it gives it an international flavour on a budget. They don't have to fly anyone in. I'm here already.
Yeah.
It makes it feel a bit more cosmopolitan. And strangely in commercials, if I go up for a commercial and I see a little ginger kid sitting in the waiting room, I'm a shoe-in for that job, right? Because they want ginger parents. So there's I think I've got a little corner of the market stitched up.
Quite right. Yeah, quite right. So obviously we know, well, the viewers won't know, but I know that you're married to an Australian lady. So, that kind of settles the visa issue. But how difficult is it to get a visa to work in Australia for someone from the UK?
Specifically as an actor? Look, I'd imagine it'd be fairly difficult. I couldn't tell you the nuts and bolts of the process because I kind of backdoored it with my Australian wife whom I met in London. It'll be the same for any skilled trade here. You can get into Australia, and I think it's still under 30 years old. You can get here and get a decent chunk of time on a visa. You might have to go pick some fruit in a farm somewhere, but you can get an extended stay. In terms of working, it would be sponsorship. You need to get I want to say a 417, but I can't remember, but you need to be sponsored for the role. And I guess that's difficult to do if you're here on a temporary visa or a working holiday visa.
Yeah.
And the best thing is always to come out with work. It's the same as people going to LA or anywhere else that say, get a job that takes you there. They'll do the paperwork for you. And then at least you've got an income and a couple of contacts. I don't know many people that have come out as an actor and just got the sponsorship simply through that channel. They've always come out through a working holiday, a temporary visa, then a permanent residency, then a citizenship, or they've had a spouse.
Gone through the long process, right? Okay, cool. So you and I, we went to drama school together, Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh. Just working out that we graduated 20 years ago, which is quite scary. How was drama school for you? I think you and I were actually both the two youngest in our year. How was it for you? And do you feel that it adequately prepared you for what the industry had in store?
Well, that's a leading question. How was it for me? It was a hoot. It was a riot. I had the time of my life. And as you point, it's funny you say that. We were the youngest people there. I was 17 when I matriculated for uni for drama school, and graduated by 20. I had my degree at 20, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So off the back of that, I would say I was young and foolish and playful and had a great time. But you'll have a great time anywhere between the ages of 18 and 20. It's time of your life. I spent a lot of time socializing, had a really fun time. I've wiped a lot of memory cells from that period. But what I do remember was the training was great. I mean, I'd love to hear your experience as well, but the training at Queen Margaret was as it was elsewhere in the UK at the time. It was designed for repertory actors. It was preparing you for long runs in theatre. So there were lots of voice work, lots of dance. We had all the fencing and stage combat that you were exceptional at, I must say. All those old skills, all the sort of Olivier type skills, preparing you for going into rep seasons for years. And that system just doesn't really exist anymore. So in terms of being equipped, it failed, I think, us on the emerging technologies at the time. The fact that we couldn't have anticipated YouTube coming out and all the sort of content creators making their own work, so we never got much screen training. It was sort of token at best, and I had to learn it on the job. I really had to pick up screen technique with the first job that I had, observing people. I feel very comfortable with theatre, but because I came out at 20, I always felt like I could have done more study. I wanted to go to Stella Adler in New York or, Meisner or something, just to sort of, just like a finishing school, I felt like it was good for the foundations, but I always wanted to get something a little bit more in-depth and more specialized than what we got. But I mean, we got the Patsy Rodenberg, the Cicely Berry, we got all the sort of old guard. We had our Hagen training. We got introductions to Adler, Meisner, and all the sort of Yiddish New York greats. But I think it was still a legacy from, Brando and Adler, and
I think at the time we went, we were just kind of on the cusp, like you say, of new technology, and it was very theatre focused. That was the one thing that kind of let the course down, I think, because I think we had 2 weeks or something. Did we not shoot a soap opera or something in 2 weeks?
How much would you have to be paid to watch that? Imagine being paid to watch that again.
I know, yeah. And you're right. We that was all the training we had to be equipped for film and TV. And I think we also lacked in a lot of industry insight. I remember we had somebody came from equity and told us a little bit about what equity was, but I don't think we really were told how to format a spotlight page or how to write to an agent or how to work with an agent. None of these things. And I think that's still prevalent from a lot of the graduates that we take on, that they seem to get trained in how to act and how to perform, but don't get trained how to be a working actor. Which is
tragic.
Yeah, which is obviously where the Audere Academy comes in. So you have graduates coming out who don't know how to do a self-tape, which 90% of jobs require now. And it's a tough process given the amount of money that it now costs. I mean, we were lucky being Scottish and training in Scotland, we were able to get it for free, but the amount of money that it costs you to go to drama school now, you want to get a little bit more from it, I think.
Yeah, you do. And like the business side of it was severely lacking for me. What you end up doing at that young tender age is you do a sort of scattergun approach. You send a letter to everybody that you can find in the back of a big book in a directory somewhere, and of course they're getting thousands of them raining in every day from other hopeful starry-eyed 20-year-olds. So it just ends up in the wastebasket, I reckon. The technical craft. Honestly, we're still learning that, and I want to take my hat off to you, by the way, for setting up the Audere Academy. I think it's brilliant because it should be a continuous professional development. The idea that you go through your 3 years, you're rubber stamped, you get your equity card, which has less and less meaning, and you're thrust out into the world a fully fledged actor is nonsense. So I think it's fantastic what you're doing. We should all be continuing with classes. With putting stuff up on our own if we've got time and money for it. So congrats, it's wonderful. But the business thing, when we're doing all these self-tapes now I get so many self-tapes and I pump them out. I've got studio equipment set up in my house. I've got lights that I can assemble within a couple of minutes. And I put out great self-tapes. I end up color grading and tweaking sound and things. So I put a lot of effort into it, but no one showed me how to do that. You've got to work it out. You've got to find the software, the programs, get into all that. So you have to be interested in editing. And this is something I wish I'd known earlier. The way you get good at your craft is by learning all the components of it. We should have studied script writing in detail. We should have been forced to write scripts. We could have been taught editing. We could have been in an editing suite, learning what makes a good cut point for actors, learning where an emotion changes and an editor is going to want to move on to something else or get a cutaway. All that craft stuff is just lacking. And the business side, like you're right, it was a visit from equity, basically to get us to sign up and pay for our membership. There was a visit from Spotlight, a lovely man, I can't remember his name, but again, it was a recruitment drive. It wasn't a how-to and how do you use our facility. There's more that Spotlight could do at the time that we didn't leverage, just in terms of getting briefs and things and how to respond to them properly. I think Spotlight's been a bit diluted now. I'm not sure what your take is, but you're getting
from an agent's point of view
that comes in.
Yeah, from an agent's point of view, it definitely has. It seems that because there's so much, because there's so many actors on there, but it's being opened up for financial gain, I think. And there are so many jobs on there which, we just can't put people forward for because they're either low paying or from companies that aren't necessarily trusted. It used to be quite an exclusive service, but it doesn't seem that way. But like you say, the business side, the business sort of development side should be taught in every drama school. I'm interviewing an accountant next week about, actors' finances, because that's another thing that nobody teaches you how to do. They don't teach you how to register self-employed, how to do a tax return, what you can claim back from a tax return, as an actor.
No. So, I mean, I did my tax return today. Coincidentally, I sat all day today in this little box and got my tax return done. I sound very well behaved, but it was actually 2 years old. I got there eventually. Like, there's something that came up through COVID that I thought was interesting. I have an ABN, an Australian business number, because I'm set up as a company, as a sole trader, but as a company entity.
Yeah.
The amount of people, and there was a government handout that helped bail out people in the arts. It was, it was again token, but it got us through.
Mm.
The amount of my friends and peers here that didn't qualify because they didn't have an ABN, because they hadn't established themselves as a business, was shocking to me, and they suffered the consequences. And that's so fundamental. It's such an easy thing to do. You treat yourself as a business. You treat yourself as, whether it's a sole trader or a separate entity, you got to set that up and treat it as a working entity that's separate from yourself. Mm-hmm. Where do you get that training? You have to go look for it. You've got to go search on the YouTubes or buy the books or learn from painful mistakes, or sit with a very expensive accountant who'll teach you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't, the result is you go to prison. That's the irony of it.
That's best case. At least in prison, you get your meals paid for, you get shelter and accommodation.
That's true.
It could be a lot worse. You can end up with a $30,000 or $30,000 or pound bill.
Yeah.
That you can't make up.
Yeah,
even
but like
that
you
is
said,
finances, siphoning off a third of your income.
Mm-hmm.
You don't learn that as a 20-year-old when you graduate, let me tell you.
You definitely do not. So let's talk a little bit about the casting process in Australia. How does it work? And is it sort of comparable to the way things are done in the UK? Do you know a lot of casting directors? Are you encouraged by your agent to contact a lot of casting directors? How does the sort of casting process work?
Right. So I'm going to have to name one of my champions here. There's a wonderful casting director in Australia called Kirsty McGregor. And I'll reference her and her team, Stevie Ray and other people. But they actually recommended me to the agent that I have now, who is exceptional. I've got a really top flight agent, very, very happy. And I've been with her for about 10 years or so now. Mm-hmm. But that came from a recommendation. I came over here and I got myself a sort of startup agency. No one knew who I was. I walked into an agency that had just come back online after taking a couple of years off for a paternity leave, and they were attached to an evening drama school. So I just needed someone to have me on the books and start putting me up for stuff. And they put me up for a couple of commercials with said Kirsty McGregor, and I booked a couple of jobs through her. And she had a word at that point, I think, with this casting, with the agent, and said, you should have a look at Kev. Mm. And that started the ball rolling with me getting a good agent. So I'm forever indebted to Kirsty for doing that and for getting me in the first place. She gets me back time and again, man. And I think that's the secret to it. Even if you're not booking the job, if you're getting someone calling you back time and again, you need to let that satisfy your ego that you're good enough at what you do, and the right job will come, and they have you in mind and they know what you do. Yeah. And I think being a younger and experienced actor, you get very sort of anxious about, I haven't heard from anybody for a while. And it's probably because they know your work, and you'll get the call when the thing lands in front of them that you're right for. There's others, there's, Peter Einberg here, who's been very kind to me. There's Mulliner's Casting, and they're all, massive agencies massive casting directors that do big budget films, theatre, commercials, because we all need the commercials to make our ends meet.
Of course. And
they've just been very, very good to me through the whole time I've been here. I don't keep bombarding them with things anymore. I trust in the process. It was better when we were in room, I've got to say. I really miss being in the room with people. There's something wonderful about a casting director you trust giving you notes that are going to make you bigger, not smaller. They're going to make you better, not worse. And you can walk out there, say, do you want to do another one? You go, if you're happy, I'm happy. And you know that it's a good one.
Yeah.
And they'll fight for you, And I've had, Kirsty in particular, there was a great production I was involved in here, a brilliant TV show called The Kettering Incident. And I know she fought tooth and nail to get me into that production. They didn't want a Scotsman in there. It wasn't written for a Brit. And she really pushed for me to be in there. And similarly with Top of the Lake, I was very lucky. I worked with Jane Campion on her sequel, Top of the Lake, China Girl over here. And that's through help and pushing from casting directors that see something in you that maybe wasn't on that take, or maybe isn't known from your back catalogue. So that relationship's massive. And I wish I'd known that as a younger man as well. The casting director relationship is the one that you really want to nurture and, you know, and look after.
And trusting in the process as well. One of my biggest frustrations as an agent is actors turning auditions down, because nowadays you're getting an audition, you know, if you're getting an audition, you've come from, you know, maybe 5,000 to 10,000 applications for that role, managed to get an audition, and to turn it down to me seems silly, because you're not just auditioning for that job, you're auditioning for that casting director who may well be casting 10 other jobs. You might not be right for that one. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, but at least do the audition, because then you're
So here's what you're saying. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
Here's what you're saying to a casting director when you don't go for that audition, or you don't think you're right for it. You're saying you don't know what you're doing. You're telling them that they don't know their job, when in fact they might have notes from a director that you're not privy to. They might see something in you that you don't know you have. There might be a vulnerable quality in you when you think it's looking for something strong, and that's exactly what they want. So who are you to say to somebody else, highly skilled in their job, and it is a highly skilled job, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm not right for this. There was a part that came up for a mother TV show called Diary of an Uber Driver here, and it was a mum and daughter having a conversation in the car, and I got this and it said mum on the page, and I was like, are you kidding me? What? Like what? How sort of what do you want me to do with this? You know? And they went, we just want you. We'll call it dad if that makes you happier, but we just want the relationship. It's all about the relationship. Played it, got it, and it was one of the pieces of work I'm most proud of. It's a lovely little show, and they were dead right. And it gave it. I think I might have been maybe I was the only man in there, in amongst a deck of female actors for the part, and it stood out. And they went, "Oh, that's interesting." Who are we to say that you're wrong and it's not going to be an interesting choice? So go for it. And the way you show up to that audition is what's going to get you called back for something else. The attitude of, hey, I'm not sure about this. How did you see this playing? Because I'm not sure I've got a hook on it yet. And they'll let you know. And that's how you book more work. You know, you treat it like a rehearsal, like you've got it already. You're grateful that you're there, and you give it your best, because you might never act again.
Yeah, and trust the process. Trust that the casting directors, who are also creatives, understand what they're doing. Yeah,
and many of them have been actors as well. You know,
that's the thing. Yeah, most of them have. Yeah. What would be your dream job and why? So you've obviously done a lot of work out in Australia. I was looking through your IMDb. There's a nice long list there. I know you also did a play at the Sydney Opera House. But what would be your ideal job and why?
Yeah. That job at the Sydney Opera House is pretty close, I've got to say. I don't know if you've got time for this.
Was it Shakespeare? Am I right in thinking?
It was a Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare, Jamie. I always have. Even from high school, I was the only person in Scotland.
Even from the time that the two of us played Bottom in Titania in A Midsummer Night's Dream.
That was a great production.
That was a great, yeah.
I had a great time on that. I don't know why I chose to do it as a Scouser. I've got no idea.
Why not?
But it was, well, why not? Well, it was a choice. It was a bold choice. Before that, so for higher grade, I don't know if they still do it, but there was a response to personal reading segment of the English exam. I think I was the only person in Scotland in that year that did Shakespeare when everyone else was doing Catcher in the Rye or whatever else. So I've always loved Shakespeare. So coming out here, I quickly discovered that there's a company called Bell Shakespeare, and founded by a John Bell, who did spend time with the RSC. And that is Australia's Royal Shakespeare Company, right? They're massive. They tour across the whole nation. And they've got lots of outreach programs. They're great. So I found them as soon as I got here and noised them up, went to a book signing with John Bell and said, how do I get in a rehearsal room with you? And he sort of very dryly said, well, write to the company manager. And so I did. And I auditioned for them, and I didn't hear back for a couple of years, actually 2 years, and then I got a call going, Kev, we wanted you. We saw you on a commercial, and that reminded us that we wanted you, because we'd kind of forgotten. We forgot you were there, but we really want you to join the company. And can you come in and have a read for this for Richard II? Richard III, excuse me. And it was an incredible production headed by Kate Mulvaney, who's an absolute superstars. Just finished working with Al Pacino.
Mhm.
She's amazing. And she was a great Richard. And I did this production at the Opera House, and it was as close to a dream gig as I'll get, really. Outside of Hamlet or playing the Scotsman there, which might happen yet.
Yeah.
But the tragedy befell that one as well, because that was the one 2 weeks into that production, into the rehearsal for it. That's when I got a phone call saying my wife was ill. And wouldn't waste your listeners' time here, but she's got a sort of ongoing incurable illness, and that was 6 years ago. And so we got through most of that production and left it before it went on tour, which was heartbreaking. But what a thrill to step out on a stage at the Opera House. And every single night, we had a standing ovation from 400 people without fail. Yeah. It was a delight. And outside of that, man, I just love my film work. I'm really enjoying getting little nibbles at huge projects. Because of the aforementioned illness in the family, I find it difficult to go away and do long stints on things. I can't be on location for a couple of months. I'm not going to go on theatre tours, for extended periods. So I'm really enjoying dropping into big things, big productions, getting a few days out of it, a couple of weeks if I'm lucky, in and out.
I noticed that you had the new Peter Rabbit film on your IMDb. How was that?
Yeah. Great. It was magic. Incredible American director Will Gluck, who I think might even have moved to Australia since. Really interesting casting for that. I think that was one he went, do a British accent. I was like, I know what you mean, so I'll do what I think you want, not what I'm already doing.
Yeah.
And it's a small part in it, a pivotal role. But again, just look, getting to see behind the curtain on a production that scale was amazing, because the budget for the first one was something like 50 million, and they recouped 350 at the box office, so sevenfold. So I think they bumped it up a bit for this one. So seeing that amount of money going into a studio at the end of my rap, I went into this big 360 studio with about, I want to say 400, 500 cameras. It was a stupid amount of high def, top of the range cameras, all blinking, taking pictures, so they could get a 3D model of my face and body, which allows them to basically animate you any way they want. And I was a human in it. So it was in case I was going to get kicked by a rabbit, they want to be able to manipulate my skin a certain way. So seeing all that was incredible. And then, of course, in productions like that, you might only be wafted in for a day, a week or whatever, but you're working with, top flight A-list actors. Donald Gleason, Rose Byrne were on that. It's brilliant. It's a great experience.
Well, talking about top flight actors, when we were at drama school, you got the chance to work with Ewan McGregor, of course. How was that? And are there any actors that you would love to work with, and why?
Yeah, that's kind of your memory to remember it, as I worked with Ewan McGregor.
So you were in a production that Ewan McGregor was also in.
Yes, that's more accurate.
That's right.
So we got a posting on the wall at drama school saying Dennis Lawson's doing a short film. We'd like some extras. Because I was at drama school, so that's exactly what we need. You want extra, you want a supporting actor, supporting artiste experience. And it was in the middle of exams for us. So I think we had a singing exam one day, and I'd said, look, I'm going to go to this thing because it's Uncle Dennis. And I knew that Dennis Lawson was Ewan McGregor's uncle. Yeah. And anything that Dennis Lawson was doing, Ewan's probably not far away. And you might recall I was a massive Ewan McGregor fan.
I do, yeah. Well, the leader of our course, taught him at drama school, didn't she?
Yeah, which I duly spoke to him about. First chance I got. So I was told, look, you can't go to this thing. You've got a singing exam. And I said, look, I'll do the exam in the morning. I'm buggering off at 11 o'clock. So I did the exam. I got marked down for it, but didn't care, because in my head, I was off to meet my hero. Yeah. And I get onto set, and I see Uncle Dennis Lawson's there, and it's very busy. And it was my first time ever on a set. And it's completely overwhelming, because I didn't know, there's people swinging lenses. They're setting up for shots. I didn't know what the hell was going on. People are calling out turnover, all these phrases that I didn't know, because, as I say, our film training wasn't that comprehensive.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the corner of my eye, I see Ewan McGregor walking out, and I could have died. I was thrilled. They're always much smaller in real life, aren't they?
They are, yes.
So he walks out, and I did something very bold that I can't believe I did. At the end of my day, just being an extra in the background and watching Ewan, I bounded up to Dennis Lawson, the director in the film, and said, "Look, sorry to disturb you. I'm at drama school. Don't have any camera experience. I'd love to come back. Is it possible to come back one day and just sit in a corner with my notebook quietly and just take some notes and observe?" And he went, "That's a great thing for a young actor to ask. Good on you for being brave enough." He shouted over his assistant. I gave her all my details, and I was back on set with him a couple of days later. And that day I got to hang out with Ewan McGregor. I mean, knowing what I know now, I must have been a massive pain in the arse, because every time he went out for a cigarette, I followed him out. Every time he wanted a minute to himself, just a bit of quiet time, I was there talking to him about drama school and the people that we had in common. And he was very, very gracious about it. And then years later, I had the good fortune to work with a guy called Liam Brennan, who's one of Scotland's finest, one of Britain's finest actors. And I worked with him on Othello at the Royal Lyceum in Edinburgh. And Liam and Ewan had been friends from years before. So I then went to see Ewan McGregor in Othello at the Donmar Warehouse in London. I went up to see him after the show and said, "Hi, Ewan, how you doing? You won't remember me, but, can I get a picture?" He went, "How did you enjoy the show?" And bold as brass, I went, "Yeah, it was all right, but I just worked with Liam Brennan playing the same part, and he was really, really good." So between the lines, saying, yeah, he was thrilled. Well, so I went, "Oh, how is Liam anyway? He's a great guy." And, I had a bit of a chat about this fantastic actor that I was trying to name drop to try and get a bit closer to my hero.
Quite right, but it's very much the best advice you can give, really. If you don't ask, it's always a no.
Look, I completely endorse that. I think every single time I've asked or pushed for something, I've got it. I got a play in Glasgow because I called up the producer and said, "I heard you're doing this thing. I heard you're auditioning tomorrow. Can you squeeze me in?" And I think they just love the audacity of it and the fact that people are, if someone's showing interest in your production, of course, they're going to be keen to see you. I did the same with Top of the Lake. I auditioned for it something like 4 times, never got anything. And eventually I did a self-test. I went out out in Sydney and shot it in front of a police station and made up a scene and said to the casting director, I said to him, "Can you please get this in front of Jane Campion? I want to be in that production. I will carry a spear. I don't care what I have to do, but I'd like to be in it." The first one was so strong. I loved it, with Peter Mullen in there and brilliant. Lizzie Moss is phenomenal. So I wanted to be in it. And I think just the boldness of saying, putting your hand up, put your hat in the ring and say, "I really want to be involved," does go a long way. And you're right. The only guarantee of failure is not trying. But everyone who's made it tried.
Well, actually, that takes us on to my next question, which was going to be, obviously, we deal with a lot of graduates coming through the academy. What would be your best piece of advice to a young actor based on the experience that you've had?
If you can give it up, give it up. I heard that when we were at drama school, and I hated it. I thought it was the worst advice I'd ever heard. But the people that I know that got out are not less happy for it. They've got a regular income and a wage and all those stable things and a family, and you get all your creature comforts. But if you're one of the people that will not be told, like me and many of the rest of us, if you won't be told or dissuaded from it, then you just have to keep going. You have to burn the boats behind you so you don't have a fallback or an excuse. And you have to keep your head up and keep learning. And it's, again, why the Academy is a great thing. The O'Dare Academy is brilliant, man. It really is. And there's a real gap in the market for good quality, consistent professional development for actors. And I think you do have to keep doing it, whether it's going to casting directors, workshops, pay the money. Don't ever pay for a casting, but pay the money for the workshops, because you're going to meet the people who are making decisions. And they're going to see you in a relaxed environment, and they're going to give you the benefit of their wisdom, and they're going to remember you. They will. I've got proof of it. They will remember you for years to come. So keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah, we represent an actor who's in his 70s now, who performed with Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. He was the 3rd ever Phantom of the Opera in the West End, and he still goes to workshops and classes now in his 70s, because he knows that you've got to keep that tool fine-tuned.
Yeah, you got to keep it fresh. You get the fear, if you're not on a set or on stage for a little while, the mind monkeys creep in, and you start wondering if you still know how to do it. Do you still remember it? Do you still have chops, or were you always deluding yourself? All that crap, negative self-talk comes in. But if you are working at it at an actor's gym somewhere, you stay fresh, you stay confident, and you get a feedback loop that says you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to get little nibbles, little jobs here and there, even if it's commercials, take them. Take every one of the bloody things, because you learn something on every job. And the other thing that I do want to say, and I hope you've got time to keep this in, one of the great joys for me now is walking onto a set in Australia and knowing people, because there is nothing worse than getting a day on something. The doctor will see you now, and you walk in, you've got one line and you stuff it. And the reason you stuff it is because there's a production that is a moving train, and it's been going for months, and all those people know each other. The cast and crew are friends, they've got rapport, and you come in for a day or two, and the pressure on that one line, when everyone else has done everything perfectly up until that point, and you've got one line, it's a massive pressure for you to stuff it up or make it bigger than it needs to be, because you want to justify being there. But when you're around long enough, if you recognize a grip, a sound guy, one of the assistant directors says, "Oh, hi, Kev, didn't know you're on this." It makes me feel at home instantly, right? And I feel like I belong, and it's a lovely, lovely feeling. And I only got that in Australia, and now I'm delighted I get it every single time. There's always someone, one or two people, that I haven't been an arsehole to. You've got to be kind.
Say one of the best bit of advice.
Yeah,
one of the best bit of advice that we get from casting directors on a regular basis is don't be a dick. Just be a nice person, because it goes so far.
How difficult is that, But I think the temptation is to get starry, or if you get a little bit of success, people think that's it and they've made it. Now, I slept in my car for a brief period in London. I was on every sofa that was available to me. So if I get a job, I'm grateful, deeply, deeply grateful to the people that got me the job, because it's not me getting a job. There's a chain of people that got me the job, whether it's a producer that saw me in something, or a casting director, an assistant that says, what about this guy? And that's only because you're a decent human being. And that means talking to everybody on set. It means treating every single one of them exactly the same way, whether it's a driver or an executive producer, because that driver will be tomorrow's executive producer. So you better keep your nose clean, do the hard work, and be nice to every single one of them. And it's not Machiavellian. There's nothing manipulative about it. No. It's be a nice person,
Yeah, just don't be a dick. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Which brings us on to our last question, which is a question that we ask every one of our guests that comes onto the podcast. If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a really challenging question.
We never have anyone say the same answer either, which is great.
I would like there to be enough quality work for everyone who wants to do it. Because I think it's so painful that some people are overlooked. I heard somebody saying once, but the cream always rises to the top. And that's not right. And in my opinion, there are a lot of brilliant talents that never get discovered, or they get discovered at a certain level and they never get a real breakthrough. And hopefully they're satisfied working at a certain level. So I wish there was more work for everyone who wanted it, good quality work. I wish the rep system still existed, because it was a training ground where seasoned, brilliant actors would bring on the younger actors in the ensemble. But it's rare as hen's teeth now. I would like to get back to being in the room more, because self-tapes are challenging. They're challenging mentally. They're challenging when you're just broadcasting things out into the ether and not getting the feedback loop completed. You might not hear, and that is difficult at times. So I wish we still had the relationships in the room, but it's here to stay. So you better just get good at it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and then beyond that, it's just the brutality of it. If I had to commit to one, it would be communication coming full circle for actors, because there's no other job that I've ever been in or ever heard of where you can go for 1, 2, 3 rounds of interviews or auditions and not know if you've got the job until you see someone else doing it.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. You realize, oh, that's on TV. I went up for that. Oh, I guess I never got it. And I think that's painful for a lot of actors. And it would be an easy fix. Even, a generic email, thank you, we've made our choices now. Mm-hmm. If you haven't heard from us, it's gone elsewhere. We will remember you, and thanks for the time and effort. It would go a long way.
Yeah. Well, Kev, that's been an absolute pleasure. It's been brilliant catching up with you. Thanks so much for doing this. Obviously, we wish you all the best of luck with everything in Australia. So yeah, go out and smash it. Take care.
Thanks, Jamie. All the best.